Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Road to Resilience with your coach, your counselor, and your mentor, Teresa Marie. Now, these shows will be very educational, entertaining, and enlightening for those of you who want to up-level in any area of your life, whether it be in your relationships, your career, your finances, your health. We're going to be covering all of those as we go on. Each episode, I'll have specific guests on my show who have specific areas of interest or expertise. I'll be doing some solo shows where I'll just be sharing with you some things that I've learned on the way. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit, you'll get uplifted, and you'll be introduced to people who may be doing the same thing that you want to do, or you are doing, or you have done, and how to learn and to grow and invest and be the best you that you can be. Now, I've been teaching resiliency skills building for almost 2 decades as a licensed psychotherapist and a coach, a life strategist. I can tell you when the pandemic hit, I had to learn the world of virtual communication. We all know that life as we knew it when the pandemic hit changed forever. So I started a Facebook page show interviewing people from all over the world. And my business started to double and triple, and I made up my mind to not let the pandemic force me to quit. So I interviewed people all over the world, and I asked them how they were staying relevant during the COVID-19 pandemic. In other words, I was helping people stay in business while they weren't doing business. And I learned a lot from those guests. And you can see many of these interviews on my Facebook page and on my YouTube channel. And in fact, I had started getting asked to do interviews for folks, business owners all over the world. And what I found was that the most successful business owners and entrepreneurs had made up their mind that no matter what it took, they were going to stay the course. Many had already been through so many significant challenges, setbacks, and adversities, and they tapped into that resilience that they had learned before the pandemic. And instead of just surviving through the pandemic, they were thriving. It was amazing. Many people were making money because they were tapping into the resilience and into the business that was already in place. Now, others learned to use that resilience to begin new startup companies. They were providing needs. They were thinking outside of the box. They were focused on winning. They were focused. As you know, the old saying, necessity is the mother of all inventions. I can't tell you how many of my guests were coming up with new ideas as they were meeting the needs of the customers. They were crushing it. Now, a good friend of mine owns a restaurant. And he and his wife had really just opened a few months before the pandemic hit. And they had poured several hundreds of thousands of dollars into opening this restaurant. They're now one of the most successful restaurant owners in my area. What they did was they kept hiring new cooks, new servers, new bartenders. They kept buying new products. They poured so much money into marketing. And they stayed current with all of the hoops they had to jump through in our state of Pennsylvania. Every hoop they jumped through made them more successful. I asked them one day, how are you staying open? How have you ended up becoming more successful than any restaurant in this local area? And they said it's mindset. Quitting is not an option for us. We've been through many things before the pandemic, And I'm sure we'll go through many things after the pandemic. But one thing we do is focus on our wins. Don't you love that? Focus on our wins. They go on to say that when you become more focused on your wins and less focused on your losses, it becomes a habit. So we focus on our wins each day, our successes. We embrace the changes and learn from them. Why? Because that's the meaning of resilience. Making better choices. Taking the opportunities in front of you and going for the win. Making quick decisions. Now, let me just say that any kind of wins will attract the winners in your life. I totally believe in like attracting like, the laws of attraction. In fact, the taglines on my emails is attracting, building, connecting. My ABCs of success. So when you start to attract like-minded people, others will start to see your resilience and your tenacity and your persistency and that stick-to-it attitude. You'll attract those that want to help you. They'll want to build with you, learn from you, and you'll develop friendships. You will connect with people on a deeper level, and you will enjoy the relationships. So being resilient can actually propel you into your purpose by attracting you to the right people. The older I get, the better I get at making decisions. Now, that's not the whole purpose of this podcast, but I want to share with you a story that can help you understand how resiliency and decision-making plays out in life. A significant setback in my business taught me a great lesson and strengthened my resiliency skills and taught me to make better decisions and keep moving forward. Now, I had been a private practitioner for several years, and I decided to form a group agency. And I had interns with me from colleges, and I had licensed therapists working for me. I had a few offices running smoothly, and at the time, I was contracted with several insurance companies, providing counseling and coaching for individuals, couples, and companies. Now, as a contracted provider, we are subject to routine audits for compliance. In other words, they want to make sure you're providing the services that you are contracted for. I was routinely audited by one of the insurance companies, and after the audit was completed, I was informed that I had compliance errors. All services were provided and accounted for, but due to the fact that they found paperwork errors, and according to this particular insurance company, the compliance issue for them was paperwork errors. I was fined heavily. I found myself having to pay back a significant amount of money. In other words, they reserve the right to charge me, so to speak, for my errors. Now, it's common for private practitioners and facilities to be audited, usually every year or every other year, depending on the company. The paperwork issues and the lack of communication between contractor and contractees and how to successfully go from a private practice to a group practice caused me to have compliance errors. Now, looking back, it's no big deal. Mind you that with larger companies that I have known and dealt with, I've seen that they tend to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay back for compliance issues. It's all based on the percentage of clients seen and services provided. Here's where the decision part comes in. First of all, I kept thinking, how did I get here? I messed up. I was thinking of giving up the business. What I did was I made a very hard decision. I decided not to contract with the insurance companies. So as each contract came up for renewal, I opted out. I decided to work by referral only. I'd always heard about referrals, but never thought it would bring the kind of business I needed. And I remember my husband's painting contracting business was all referral. I learned how to market my business and decided to downsize my company and start a coaching business. I became a successful coach because I remembered where I came from. I remembered the decisions that I had made in the past. And I moved forward. Now, you must have been at a place in your life where you had to make decisions. Maybe you had to decide to persevere through a terrible job situation or a challenging family situation. Maybe you've made poor health decisions. Look, if you're here listening to this, then you are still in the game. Move on. Stop living in the past. You have it in you to succeed. If you've been through enough tough times, you can keep going. Now, that one hard hit was enough for me. I made a decision. I will go on referrals only. I learned about referrals. My husband was all referrals. Many companies were getting out of contracting with insurance companies. I did my research. I got my own counseling and coaching and consulting for my business, my personal and professional development. It's possible. It's doable. Look, people will find you if you are full of integrity, confidence. If you love what you're doing, then the referrals will come organically. And that's what happened to me. Now, let's face it, we've got to touch on the COVID because everybody got blindsided with this pandemic. It was mind-boggling. It was frustrating. It was scary. It was confusing. Now, did I know if COVID was going to end? I had no idea. What did I do? I invested in myself, my career. I reserved more coaching for myself. I gathered a team of marketing experts. I did virtual trainings. I joined virtual networking. I had virtual coaching for myself as well as provided virtual coaching for past and present clients. The fact is that my resilience within me said, no way, keep going. I'm not saying it was easy. It wasn't. Now I'm writing a book, and in the book I share my story, my journey, my mistakes. Resilience has taught me to remember who I am and where I came from and where I'm going. That all comes from building the mental muscle of resilience. I'm persistent. My coaching and my counseling doubled during COVID. Listen, many therapists retired during this time in our country's history. Many coaches retired. Many businesses simply went out of business. Now, I'm not blaming anyone who decided to make that decision for their life, their business. But for me, I kept serving. I kept coaching. I kept counseling. It all has to do with resilience. Third point, I want to say that you got to live in the now. It's now o'clock. Many of my clients and colleagues have heard me say it's now o'clock, because now is all we have. I had a client a few years ago as I was helping her get prepared for her bariatric surgery because she wanted and needed to lose a very significant amount of weight. Now, I work with clients who are, by the way, referred by hospitals, preparing for weight loss surgery. And we were talking about resiliency and how to navigate all the nutritional and the physical and the emotional changes that come from weight loss surgery. And she began to tell me the story of how her first child, before he was born, her grandfather was very ill and dying. Now, she was very close to her grandfather. She stated that he raised her because she didn't know who her father was, and her grandfather was very instrumental in her life. Now, here she is pregnant with her first little baby coming, and her granddad, who raised her, who she's very close to, was terminally ill. And I remember that she told me that she knew in her heart he was going to live until he saw that baby. Now, the baby was born, and several hours later, her grandfather passed. Although he never got to see the baby, she believes that he knew the baby had arrived. And in fact, she named the baby after her grandfather. The point is that the baby was coming no matter what, and resiliency is what this man must have had. I believe he must have made a decision to himself, with himself, to stay alive because of the power of resilience. Now, my client was at that point where her now was totally upon her. She had a new baby and had to keep going. The power of resilience, the power of now. Let me ask you, what choices are you making that are resulting in the kind of success you desire? Do you need to make different decisions? Decide this very moment, this very hour, right now. Find people and places and things that are more in line with your core values and your idea of success. Now, I want to share with you this last story, and I believe one of the more important parts of this topic, and why I believe the power of resilience will help you in any area of your life. Now, many years ago for me, while I was a young widow and a single mother, I read the story about a courageous woman named Corrie ten Boom. During the Holocaust, she kept Jewish people and members of the Dutch resistance in her home with her family in order to help them escape their ultimate death. Now, you have to remember, she was hiding them in her home, and eventually her family was caught. Her family was arrested and sent to a concentration camp. Corrie ten Boom is most noted for her forgiving her oppressors. After the Holocaust, she traveled and began speaking about forgiveness and resilience and being able to overcome such harsh circumstances, and how she was able to survive. And at one speech, she remembers while performing in Germany, she saw her most cruel oppressor in the audience. And after her speech, he made his way towards her. She recounts how she saw him. She saw his overcoat, his brown hat, and his uniform with his cap that had skull and crossbones. Now, she was there to speak about resilience and forgiveness, and here comes her most horrible oppressor. Now, you have to read her autobiography. But she recounts the story of how there he was in front of her, and there looking right at him. It was the first time she had been face to face with one of her captors since her imprisonment, and this one was her most brutal captor. He reached out his hand to grab hers. And at that moment, she says she knew she had to forgive him. She took his hand and she forgave him. She says that those who were able to forgive their former enemies in the concentration camps were also able to rebuild their lives no matter what the physical scars. However, she goes on to say, those who harbored their bitterness remained invalids. It was as simple and as horrible as that. She shook his hand and she forgave him. In closing, I would just like to say thank you so much for being with me here today. We've all been through so many challenges in the past couple of years that I just hope that hanging out with me here at the Road to Resilience with Teresa Marie will help you to learn how to anchor yourself in the bad times. Today, we've talked about the power of resilience and why it's important, the power of decision making and why it's important to make the right choices, and why it's important to live in the now and not get stuck in the past. I always like to tell people you can't put toothpaste back into the tube. So it's always time to move on. And I hope that you have found some value in our time today. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram at teresamarie.coach. You can find me on my Facebook page at Create Your Own Story with Teresa Marie. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as Clubhouse. It's safe to say that you can pretty much find me on any social media platform. And I hope that you will tune in next time. And if you would like to be a guest on this show, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Or if you know someone who would make a great addition to interview, please let me know. And if you have a podcast and you would like for me to come onto your show, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I wish you all peace, health, and prosperity. Again, this is Coach Teresa with you on the Road to Resilience podcast with Teresa Marie. Bye now.